Hi everyone, welcome to video number 2 of this beginner GoPro series. So today we are going to talk about a bunch of the settings of GoPro, how to customize it and make the shots that you are taking look like you want them to. Starting with, first, how to get rid of this weird fisheye effect. This is what's called the lens that the camera is using, and this is the wide lens. So I'm going to show you a few examples of some of the different lenses that we have, and then we're just going to keep moving forward and look at some comparison of footage that is being shot on this GoPro. So there are 3 different kinds of lenses that we're going to look at today with footage starring my good friend Christy. First up, we have the wide lens, which has the fisheye effect so that it can have more of the environment actually in the shot. This is probably what your GoPro will be set as to start. Next up, we have the linear lens, which still has a fairly wide picture, but it does not have the fisheye effect anymore. And the last one we're going to look at today is the narrow lens. This is similar to the linear because it is flattened out without the fisheye effect, but it is zoomed in to a narrower focus and a smaller picture. Just so you know, for the rest of the video, all the footage I'll be shooting will be in the linear lens. The next setting we need to talk about is FPS, and what this stands for is frames per second. Since all video is just a series of still images played in succession, we need to know how many images are going to be in each second. The first frame rate we're going to look at is 24 frames per second. This is the cinema standard. So if you're looking for your shots to feel more like a movie, this is what you're going to want to use. Next up, we have 30 frames per second. This is equally acceptable for recording or streaming. It's pretty standard. Lastly, we have 60 frames per second, which is definitely preferred for streaming and also acceptable for recording. The way my brother explained frame rates to me is that the higher the frame rate, the more real life it'll look. And that 24 frames per second was deemed the minimum acceptable number of frames per second for a certain footage. Well, it does seem more desirable to have a higher frame rate all the time if it's going to seem more real life-like. It's all depending on the effect that you're going for and also the amount of size that you can have your file be. So the more you increase the frame rate, the larger the video file will actually become. The rest of the footage I show in this video will be 30 frames per second. Next up, we have resolution, which is the number of pixels in the image. And the higher the number of pixels, the cleaner the image. 1080p, which is 1080 pixels, is the standard resolution for streaming and for HD, and is probably what you're going to use for most of your recording. 4K, or 4000 pixels, is cleaner but will make the file bigger, and some older computers might not be able to play 4K files. So now that we know what all the settings mean, let's find out where they are in the GoPro and how we can use them to customize our footage. So at the bottom here, I know it's hard to read, but go with me. It says standard, and then underneath it says 1080 60W. And what that means is standard is the name of this settings of the mode. What that means is this standard is the name of this mode for the camera. And then you have 1080, which means 1080 pixels, that's the resolution, 60 frames per second, and then wide is the lens. And all of the different modes for the camera are going to look like this for film. If you wanted to scroll through all the preset modes, what you can do is you can click on that, and they'll have them here. So there's ones for standard, activity, there's one for cinema, if I can scroll, and then there's a slow-mo one. And then at the bottom, you can see a plus one. We'll get to that in just a bit. Okay, so if I wanted to customize the one that we're already in, let's press standard and then you press on the edit button. On the top left is just that first setting that you're really going to need, and this is for resolution and frames per second. At the top, you can select the resolution that you need, which right now it's set to 2.7K, so I could set that to 1080, 2.7K, 4K, 5K. I'm going to ignore that for a second, but let's leave it at 2.7K, and then at the bottom you can select the frames per second. Again, unless you're doing something with slow-mo, I would not suggest going above 60. And once you're all set with what you feel comfortable with, just click on the blue thing in the center and you can just back out and be all set. All right, and if you want to change what lens you're using, you're going to click on this bottom left circle here, and you can drag up and down to pick your lens. And there's more than just the 3 I showed you today, but those 3 are the main ones that you're going to need. And then you can click in the center to get out of that. Okay, now let's take a look at inside of here and create our own setting for the camera. So you click on the current mode setting, and then you can scroll to the bottom and hit the plus button. It's going to ask you if you wanted to make a video setting mode or a looping one or a slow-mo. Let's go with video for now, and you can just click in the center. Then in the middle, it's going to ask you what resolution or frames per second you want, and this is where you can pick. Right now it's set to 1080 and 60. Again, I know it's hard to read, but if you're following along on a GoPro, this will make more sense. You click on that, and then you can check yes. Then you can choose what you want to name it. For now, I'm just going to go with custom. Press select, and then I have my custom mode. Again, you can change the lens setting here on the left, and I probably want this to be linear. And then we're all set. So now I have my linear mode set to 1080 resolution, 60 frames per second. Let's take a second and look back at that pop-up menu that happened when we were selecting our resolution and frame rate before. This is to warn you that the video that you are creating is going to need your computer to be able to have the encoder HEVC, which is a fairly new encoder. And most of our computers probably won't have it, so if that happens, try a different frame rate and resolution combination and see if that's going to work out. It is available for purchase for just $1 on Windows, but I do believe that you would have to get permission from the IT department to download it, so I would check with Sunny on that. The last thing I want to cover for today is for whatever setting mode that you are using or creating or modifying, you should go in and make sure that the sharpness is to your liking. So you go to the edit little pencil where you scroll down, and then sharpness will be on the left. You can set it to medium or low. I would suggest not using high because I've had some trouble with it making the image grainy and unpleasant. So that's just a nice little warning for you, but feel free to disregard it if you do want the image to feel grainy. All right, that is everything for this video. See you in part 3.